Good morning. You're watching The Catholic Monarchist. For today's show, we'll be continuing on with our series, Building a Catholic Monarchy. In the first edition, I made a brief overview of the structure that I envisioned this government would look like. And while it was rather broad and lacking of many important details, it should have at least painted a general picture. So now that we have a basic idea of what this government would look like, we could begin to figuring out who should be eligible to fill in these positions. In my opinion, unlike the post-revolutionary spirit, not every human being was created equal in the sense that we do have all the same mental and physical capabilities. That's not true. The reality is that we are all wired differently. For instance, the saying that anyone can be president is absurd. When you take into account the type of work, dedication, and brain function, and the willpower needed to avoid getting corrupted, there are very few people who are qualified to do that job well. And that doesn't mean that those who can't perform that job well are lesser than those who can. But there are clear distinctions of people's capabilities. Now, just to make sure everything is clear, I do believe that every human was created equal in the eyes of God. Every soul is equally precious to Him, and He loves every one of us. And our souls are all meant for Him. So just because God might make one person smarter than another doesn't mean He loves the less intelligent person any less. He's given all of us our own gifts and talents for us to flourish in our own ways. But most importantly, He's given us all a different path to reach Him based on our talents He gave each of us. Ultimately, we use our free will to determine whether we want to be happy with Him in heaven after we die, and He wants us to ask for His help as well, because we can't do it without Him. But my point is, we've got to let this idea go that everyone has a chance to do anything they want, because we're just wired differently. I wouldn't make a good doctor or scientist, for instance, because that's just not where my talents lie. In most of the world, this secularized version of equality has replaced the true equality with God that I just explained. Most people, I believe, are simply not capable of being involved in politics, at least not seriously. It requires a particular skill set, hence why we have so many unfit people in office right now, and why democracy is such a disaster, because it essentially gives every person a certain level of power of governing themselves by choosing who they believe is best qualified to govern them. And so when I'm determining who would be fit to hold public office, there are standards beyond just, are you a functioning human being, that must be kept. So first, there is a moral standard. A person who will have the responsibility of citizens' livelihoods in his hands absolutely must have a strong moral character. This is the aspect that I believe needs the most strict vetting process. Background checks, conversations with family, friends, acquaintances, and other people they have interacted with is important. Also, and I know this starts falling into a discrimination category, but since it is a Catholic monarchy, I think there needs to be some safeguards there as well. Perhaps they don't have to be strictly Catholic to be eligible, but at the very least, they should not hold any opinions, nor belong to any religions that hold any animus towards God and the church. So for the sake of the obvious, for instance, a Satanist is ineligible. Okay, so the next determining factor is intelligence level. Now, I'm not talking about, just taking an IQ test. I'm talking about one's possession of an intuition that allows them to plunge into the cutthroat world of politics and be able to be influenced by people who are genuinely trying to help, not ones who seek to undermine and destroy. They need the mental fortitude to be able to adapt to any situation, as well as be able to make very difficult decisions and not hide from their duties. They have to have a willingness and ability to always learn and improve themselves and not fall into complacency. And of course, intuition isn't everything. There is a level of intelligence needed as well. Pattern recognition, for instance, is another good trait to have. I get that this wouldn't be, a foolproof process, obviously, but nonetheless, I can't stress the importance, at least for the existence of these standards and the conscious effort to enforce them. This point I just made about intelligence and intuition is probably laughably obvious, but it needs to be touched on because it does not seem to be applied anywhere in governments nowadays. Then there are some miscellaneous things that factor in, so age is another one. The minimum age, I would say, should be 30 years old. And once you hit 70 years old, you should retire. Because for two things, experience is important, but mental sharpness is another. And both of those are affected by age in different ways. Another one is gender. Yes, I don't believe women should be in government leadership roles. Although, don't get me wrong, there are many strong and intelligent women behind men in leadership positions. They inspire and they influence them, and they make them better people than who they could make themselves to be. I believe that the psychological and physical makeup of a woman is different from a man's. Not saying that in a negative way. Their strengths and weaknesses aren't as compatible with a role like that. And only the most exceptional women have ever made good rulers. That's not to say that women have no influence in the well-being of a nation. It is quite clear in history that a society with virtuous women elevate the men, while non-virtuous ones drag them down. There is a lot of influence that women have. I just don't believe it should be in positions of governance and leadership. They won't flourish there. And the very last important determinant factor is citizenship. This should have to go without saying, but anyone who holds a dual citizenship or more is not eligible for office. They have to be 100% loyal to this nation. At the very least, they also have to have been born here. And I would probably go even a step further and say that their family must have presided here for at least 50 years. Their roots should run deep here. All right. So I think I've covered all of the main topics here. It's a work in progress. I'm just trying to get the general outline out there for now. There are so many details to wrap our brains around, and it's going to take a lot of time. But for now, that's what I've got. So, what do you think? What can I improve? What am I missing? I'm learning as time goes on. I'm sure we all are. Like I said before, I want to make this a well-oiled machine. I want to make it as just functional as it could possibly be, as well as virtuous. So with all that said, that's all I got for you today. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and God bless.